All right, let's make a formal introduction for our listener. Good morning, Gabe. My name is Claudio. I'm calling you from Washington, D.C., from the studios in Fairfax City. We're very humble and grateful that Gabe Treiyer accepted our invitation to our show. Gabe, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thank you very much. Thank you for having me, man. I mean, such an honor, such an honor.
No problem. Thank you. So usually I start every conversation talking about the COVID, how the COVID, the pandemic, affected you, your family, as a touring musician during the pandemic, you couldn't go out that much. Some people believe in the vaccine, some people don't believe in the vaccine. Whatever. How you holding up? How affected your life?
Well, I think COVID had a very positive side, besides the disease, that for us musicians, because we never, I think not even my generation or yours have to go through a world lockdown, or I mean, we never heard about it or something. And it was great because it really made us to reinvent ourselves as musicians, and musicians, I mean, I'm always been very technology wise and oriented, because obviously I had a technology background, but some musicians, never been aware of being on YouTube or working on social media or through the internet. And this really made many pros to made think about it, because if I don't know about your experience, but I think that they made us realize that if you're not on the internet, you're not on the business.
That's right.
Because obviously the tours are still happening. There always been tours, but we never been in something like this. So many guys had to reinvent themselves, in order to start making sessions, YouTube videos, whatever you want to call it, and it was very positive from that side, and I think, I mean, I did a COVID video, I think I told you about, previously, or that it was great. I mean, all this opportunity to be in touch with great musicians that weren't on tour. Everybody were at their house, and it was great because it gave us the opportunity to do something different and something that we weren't able to do before, I mean, and once everything started to open again, well, you asked me about the vaccine. Well, I mean, in this job, I know and I respect everyone's, thoughts about the vaccine, if they agree with them. But my job, this is me, this is my opinion. My job is to be out there. So when you're touring, you're exposed. You're exposed to be in airports, stage, crowds, everything. Sometimes you play it on big outdoor venues. Sometimes you play it on big indoor venues. So you need to be in touch with people all the time. It's different than many guys that probably your job, you told me about that, your computer and technology related on your job. So it's different because you do homework and that's it. But traveling and being in touch with people it's very different. So what are the tools that I have? Well, I need a shot? Well, yes, it's not only because the clients, the promoters, or everything requested, it's because of you also, and taking care of your family too. It's like, okay, what do I need to do? Because my job is this. I need to go out to the outside world, and being exposed. So do I need 1, 2, and a booster? Sure, why not? Because at the end of the day, it won't kill me. I mean, and well, I'm telling you something. 10 days ago, for the first time, my wife tested positive. Wow. Yeah, first time. It was like a flu, But I test myself 3 times being with her, and I was negative. We were supposed to have the best home test, available here. And otherwise, I don't know if I can be like this, and probably, I don't know, I could be in bed or something, but I mean, I don't know. But it helped me to go through it. And if everyone asked me, hey, are you vaccinated? Yes, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, good for you. Thank you. Let's talk about your upbringing. Were you born like in a musical family where music was important?
Oh no,
Were you
no,
when you
no,
began
no. Yeah.
taking piano lesson or guitar lesson?
Well, actually, like many others, I became the black sheep of the family.
Me included.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, I mean, music was part of my life since I was, I don't know, like forever. But I realized that at 4, I remember I'm from Argentina, and at 4, I remember watching TV and a Kiss commercial from their album at the time, Dynasty, came out on the TV, and I was in shock. What is this? Yeah. What is this? I mean, it was a perfect combination. I mean, they look like superheroes with a guitar, I mean, the whole package for me, I was sold immediately. So I was like, I want to be like that, was the first step. I had no idea how to play the guitar. Well, what's the first thing you grab? The tennis racket. Okay.
That's
right. So it didn't happen. I mean, I stayed like that until 11. I remember even my wife, it's like, were you crazy or something? I mean, my Christmas gift at the time, I was always asking, besides the Star Wars action figures, the Kiss cassettes that were releasing at the time. So every Christmas I had a Kiss album. And of course, it wasn't like music like sometimes, in the late 70s. It was pretty heavy during the 80s, and being 8, 9, 10-year-old listening to that kind of music, it kind of forged, your taste and your musical experience. And I remember that I was watching, well, you will remember something that many TV channels made at the time, that was broadcasting both at the same time, radio and TV. They broadcasted the concerts, at the same time. So you were able to listen it on the radio, and on TV. And they aired what they were playing, Dire Straits' Alchemy.
Yeah, wow.
And when I heard that version of Sultans of Swing, the 10-minute version, I was floored. I was like, wow, man. I mean, what is this? And I remember that the day after that, I told my dad, I want a guitar. And my dad was like, this is the first time you asked for a nonsense. So let's go and buy it. And I couldn't even play a note, I started taking lessons and all that stuff. And I remember my dad, I realized then that he was a frustrated musician, but I remember my dad being on the couch with my guitar and doing just this, not playing anything, but he was happy just to do, to be able to do that. So, and after that, I started playing guitars, a couple of, family issues. I mean, when I was 13, my dad passed away. So imagine how is that at that early age, entering the teenage year, that what is the best thing you can do? Focus in music. So after that, that's why I say, and I'm saying this not to be on a downside, because it was pretty much what forged me as my attitude to being towards music all the time. So after that, because of the growth spurt, I had to, the doctor had to put 2 nails on my hip. So I wasn't able to walk during 6 months. At 13 years old, what's the only thing you can do? This and listen to radio, right? So I was playing this 24/7, practicing and all that stuff. So by the time I became 15, I was already playing in bands. And of course, and I'm saying this, with the best of intention, but I was, of course, a couple of steps ahead of my friends playing guitar, because obviously I had the chance to focus,
6 months straight.
24/7 on this, and I remember that I was reading a Steve Vai interview at the time. Passion and Warfare came in. I mean, it was like something totally new remember, 13 years old, right? So it opened my mind in incredible ways, and I read an interview that he was like clocking 8 hours a day, playing, practicing. And I was like, if I want to be like that, I need to practice that. Of course, high school went to hell, right? So I was clocking. I remember my friends coming, hey, would you like to play football or soccer for American? Do you want to? No, I have 3 hours left of practice. Oh, fuck off, and I kept doing this because that's what I want to do.
Sure.
And of course, you have to deal with how do you explain your mom that you want to be a musician and you want to play with all the guys you have on the posters on your wall when you're a teenager in Argentina. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean. What they say? What do your mom? Well, but eventually, right? Eventually, you finished high school, right? You were 17, 18.
Eventually, I quit high school. I came back to high school because actually a friend at the time, he was my best friend at the time. He had a studio, and I was, spending more time there than at home, learning. I was pretty immersed in all the recording process and all the stuff. He was like, look, I'm telling you something. You don't finish high school, if you don't go back to high school, you never put a foot here anymore.
Wow.
And because of that, that's it. And I finished high school, and then I was free.
Sure.
Then I was free. So obviously I started to form in bands. I changed my style. I always had in mind, because I'm a very mind open guy, my taste, and I always wanted to be a session player. So being able to play different kind of music, with all the guys. So I started to form bands. That's why I came in the first time to the United States, started playing in cover bands and all that stuff. And it was great. It was great. But I came back to Argentina, and I was kind of disenchanted with the whole scene. I was tired of that pay to play kind of thing, that I was like, no, dealing with bands. And that's why I started, because I always loved electronic music. And that's why I started to do some electronic music, play synthesizers and all that stuff, creating loops. And it was great. I mean, it wasn't just playing a button. I was creating my own stuff in there. So with the time, I had this idea of calling, because I heard that song on the radio. I called the lead singer from Loves Jezebel, without having any contact or previous contact before. I was like totally reckless on, hey, I would like to do a version of your song. What will I expect from such a statement? I mean, I probably was like, well, you can go to hell. I don't know, something like that. And the guy, Michael, was like, yeah, man, I'd be delighted. I was floored, like, wow. So from that moment on, I have a saying, you always have a no. Go for a yes.
Of course.
Right?
That's right.
My career, and that's why my professional career started. It was an email away, from everything. You're always an email away from everything.
That's right. Yeah. Were you, at the time when you were in Argentina, I mean, were you listening to, besides the American bands? I want to know what bands in Latin America you listening was.
Well, at the time,
Charlie Garcia, Soda Stereo,
it was
Pedro
a different
Aznar.
generation. It was a different generation, obviously old Ceru Girán, Charlie Garcia, and all those guys I grew up in the 80s, so I know, but how do you say this? I mean, I think that at that period of my life, I remember Soda Stereo, and my favorite album from them is Dynamo, the more experimental. And I always loved to death Gustavo Cerati because not only he was a great writer, songwriter, composer, singer, and the whole package, you know, on the guitar, the guy was always experimenting with effects, and he came from the same school that I came to. So it was like Andy Summers, The Edge, and all that, you know, using effects on the guitar and not just ripping off, you know, and applying all that to songs. And that's why I think that Gustavo Cerati is the greatest musician in the whole of Latin America. No disrespect for anyone, but this is my opinion. And obviously, after he passed away, every time someone released some of his music, it sells like, you know, he were alive. I mean, it's the same, you know, and I don't think that doesn't happen with any other artist in Latin America. Anyway, I remember at the time, you know, of course, on the radio, you had Maná, you have Aguares and Lale or some, but I was never really much of a fan, you know, of all those bands, except for Gustavo Cerati and Soda Stereo. And at the time I was doing, you know, I started making electronic music. Gustavo came with Bocanada, which was the perfect blend. I mean, Bocanada for me is at the same level in my life, at the same level that David Bowie's Erling, because that was a perfect marriage of electronic music and electric guitars.
Yeah.
So for me, it was I love Bocanada because it represents a moment in my life that I was trying to do the same. And I was like, oh, this guy is doing that and he's becoming massive, you know, and that's great. That's great. Talking about Bowie, you know, I'm working with the current with my guitars from 10 years now. I play with Rips Gabriel's model, which is Rips Gabriel's, you know, Tin Machine, David Bowie's guitar player for 10 years, and now he's in The Cure. And when we met in Buenos Aires, he introduced me to the company. So, you know, he was like, okay, you come from Rips, it's okay. So I had a really good recommendation from them.
Feel free to mention the guitar you have. All right, show it.
What, sorry?
Yeah, tell the story about the guitar. That's important.
Oh, about this guitar. Okay, so many guys can recognize this guitar like Brian May's guitar, right?
Yeah.
So when I met Brian, you know, I was invited to their show in Buenos Aires in 2015. We kept in touch, and you know, Brian has a inner circle of friends that each year he gives guitars to some of those persons. I've been in touch with the head of the company for quite some time, and I was like, hey man, is there any way I can be, you know, jump the kid, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, well, let me know, let me see what I can do. And okay, thank you. And some 2 years later, I was coming back from Oklahoma playing with Fran Cosmo, and while waiting at the airport, I got the email that, hey, your guitar is coming, you know, in a couple of weeks. So it's
there is.
signed by Brian May, personalized by him. And as a huge Queen fan, you should realize what this means to me, right?
That's for you, man. Great. Have you been using that one, or you keep it?
Well, actually,
or you prefer to keep it?
I took this one on a couple of home gigs here, you know, pretty close, because with another act that when I'm not on tour or doing it, we got with another violin player that lives here, pretty renowned violin player. We have a a duo called Strings on Fire, which we play the instrumental songs. You know, sometimes he's in violin and I play the guitar, and you know, we play the songs that we love, and we do like a 12-minute Queen medley, and that's where this
You
guitar
bring it
comes in for special events only.
okay. Yeah,
Special.
you gotta
I
be
got
careful.
one of my main ones, you know, with the time became signed by Steve Hackett, Adrian Belew, Rips Gabriels, Steve Rothery from Marillion, Andy Summers, and all those guys. So that's my number one. That sometimes I'm taking on tours, sometimes I don't. You know, mainly because of the signatures in there. But you know, it's like it was my number one guitar for many years and many tours. You know, it was like, and I was actually my number one. Now, I was in Phoenix with Fran Cosmo, the former lead singer from Boston, and on the same bill there were Jefferson Starship and Grand Funk Railroad. So we've been playing at this huge outdoor venue, and funnily enough, Bruce Kulick from Kiss, you know, the guitar player for Kiss during almost 15 years during the 80s and 90s, plays now in Grand Funk. And because we made this COVID video, you know, the pandemic video, we never met in person, you know, but we just met on the backstage of that festival. So he said, I was like, hey, Bruce, I gave him my CD and all that stuff. And hey, will you sign my guitar? Yeah, of course. I got, you know, I'm a huge Kiss fan. So for me, it was such an honor, you know, it's like, it's not only for me. All this stuff will pay for my daughter's college.
That's right. Eventually, you understand. So let's go. So you end up coming to the United States, and then you was your album Unsung Hero was a self-release, and feel free to elaborate on the process, how difficult it was to put it together, and so forth.
Well, actually, that album came during a strange period of my life. I mean, strange because at the time I think like I was either on tour or I was living outside Buenos Aires at the time. But during that period, I moved like, you know, from the United States to Argentina to Chile, came back and blah, blah, blah. And I always had my computer, you know, and audio interface. And I was, you know, on some time off, I was like, well, I want to do an album and I don't have many people, you know, around. So I'll try to start writing myself and recording myself, because thankfully I play keyboards and bass guitars. I do programming, you know, kind of do it all, because not from an ego point of view. It's because I don't want to depend on anyone to do something, you know, on a recording. If I need to play a bass, I play it. If I need to play a keyboard, I play it, you know, and that's it. Then if I need another person that plays much more than me, or I want it for a specific thing, that's different. You know, I call someone and that's it. But for that album, you know, it was like, it was the opposite than many guitar players, because I always been a songwriter. So I always wrote songs, because personally, I think that every great band, they weren't famous because of the guitar solo, the keyboard solo, or anything, because they had all that on great songs.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So that's why the people, the Beatles are, I mean, timeless. Or the Stones, or Yes, or Genesis, or whoever you want to name, you name it. Okay, so and for me, the difficult thing, because I'm not a singer, at least not a lead singer, and I was like, well, I've tried to do something that I never did, an instrumental album. And I was like, this is kind of difficult, because obviously when you have lyrics, you have something to say. But what do you say on the guitar? What do you say on the guitar? So I don't want to be just a guy that looks like a jam session, you know, like jamming licks. So no, I just want a regular song with a melody line and saying something with the guitar. And that's what I try to do. So then I called some friends at the time, you know, like David Palau from Spain, Tommy Denander from Sweden, which we were touring at the time with Bobby Kimball, the lead singer from TOTO. And Tommy is like the European Steve Lukather. I mean, the guy played with everyone, about 5,000 albums. And nowadays, the last thing he did was playing, you know, he co-wrote and co-produced the last 2 or 3 Alice Cooper's albums, along with Bob Ezrin and some, you know, big names. He played even, he always say that was what he said like a year ago, like, hey, I even played a chord on a Deep Purple album.
Yeah.
On the Infinite album, you know, they were with Bob Ezrin, who produced that album, and he was on the studio with him. And Roger Glover came in to the studio, and he was listening to a mix, and he was like, "There's a missing chord here." Where? Here, I think it was a chorus or verse or something. It was like, "There's a missing chord here." And Roger said, "Well, Bob told me that you're a great guitar player. Can you play that chord?" So he just recorded one chord. That's it. And he was credited at lost chord on the album. And he was like, "Hey, I play with Deep Purple, right? One chord."
Wow, what amazing. How you
So yeah, I mean, that album came out, you know, out of not having too much people around. And thankfully technology, you know, was great, because I was able to call some friends to be on the album, and you know, with the internet was kind of easy, you know.
Sure. And then your second album, I was able to listen to it last night, The Scars, A Journey Through a Lifetime, and you play with a lot of, you know, guitar legends as guests. You know, feel free to elaborate how you contact them, and you know, how you put together, and the end product. You told me that you didn't like it that much, so you end up remastering and arrange it to your tasting. And feel free to elaborate on that, because that's an important album.
Well, actually, that album was something that it was an extension of a period of my life that I was playing with some of those guys, you know. 2014, I remember Marillion went to Buenos Aires, and I wrote Steve Brother, because I always been a Marillion fan. I wrote to Steve, "Hey man, I'm this guy, blah 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 blah," and I've always been a huge fan of the band. So if there any chance to meet you, sure, man, come to the show. We meet at backstage, blah 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 blah. So I came to the backstage, and I met Steve, one of the sweetest guys that I ever met. So we became very, very good friends with the time. And he invited me to have a drink. And I remember I was with a friend of mine that he had to wake up early in the morning. I was like, "Steve, thank you so much. I cannot make it, but next one for sure." And I remember we kept in touch, you know, changing emails and blah, blah, blah. And a couple of months later, that was in May of 2014. Around October, he wrote me something like, "Hey, are you going to be on January in Buenos Aires?" I was like, "I think so. Yeah, why?" "I'll let you know later." Okay. And by December, he called me and was like, "Hey, I'm going to Buenos Aires to do another business." He was doing an app for his photograph books. He's a great photographer as well, you know, and there was a book collecting pictures from the early beginnings of Marillion to the very last tour. And it was postcards from the road. And he came to Buenos Aires, and he was like, "Why don't you set up a show and so we can play together? And it's such a shame that if I go there, people don't see me play." So
yeah.
And I was like, "Great." I didn't have a band at the time. That's why the Gabe Treiyer band came to life. You know, I had to set up a band, and we played. I mean, in January in Buenos Aires, it's summer high season, so no one was in the city. No one was in the city. So when it was announced, I remember that, of course, Marillion fans and many prog rock fans are hardcore fans, right? So many canceled their vacations, many returned earlier from the vacation or delayed the vacation because of the show, and because they never been able to see Steve playing on a little club. I mean, we played for, I mean, it was packed, sold out, but it was like 150 guys, you know?
Wow.
And I, of course, because at the time I was used to, at the time I was playing, you know, with big names. So I was used to being with these guys and being with Steve. But I remember been drinking something, you know, at the entrance door at the club, and the people were entering the bar, and when they saw Steve, they were like, jaw dropped, like Steve was there. I mean, they were used to see Steve, you know, on big theaters or arenas or something, but and Steve talking with everyone, and they were like, I mean, it was like a dream-like experience for many of these guys. And from that moment, we became good friends with Steve. He decided to launch a South American label, you know, because many of Marillion and his solo albums weren't released there, and it was easier. I mean, it was a way to make it easier for fans to not spend a fortune trying to get him from England or Europe or whatever. And we released a couple of songs, a couple of albums, and his latest solo album at the time, which is a great album. I strongly recommend it because he has Steve Hackett and Steve Wilson playing in there, but it's instrumental and very atmospheric. I mean, it's awesome, an awesome album that I listen to this day. And we, for the launch of the label, we set up a couple of shows, you know, with the local band Bad Dreams. So and with Steve, I start becoming a kind of known in the prog scene. Of course, I was playing with Bobby Kimball from TOTO, which, you know, of course, many fans loved. And with this, and then I start, thanks to Steve, because he's pretty close friends with Steve Hackett. I met Steve Hackett and we became friends. We've been in touch and blah, 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 blah. One thing led to another. And I was like, okay, I've always been a prog rock fan and I'm playing with these guys. I'm going to do a prog rock album. And I was like, why not? I mean, I always loved that. And I was like, I'll do it. But I always had this idea in my mind. I always loved The Wall, one of my favorite prog albums. You know, many people don't consider Pink Floyd prog, but I mean, The Wall, it's, you like it or not, whether you like it or not, one of the greatest albums of all time. And that idea of telling the story of my life, you know, in an album. Of course, when you are 20 or 25, what the hell are you going to say? I broke up with my girlfriend. That's it. Your life was that. You know, that's it. So after at the time I was 42, I've been through, you know, a divorce and many things in my life as a musician, you know, and many experiences that I was like, and of course, by the time I formed a new family with my current wife, so you've been through a lot of stuff, you know, and I was like, this is the right moment to do it. And it's harder because I wasn't in a band, so I was the only one, you know, writing stuff. So when you do something like that, it's like, okay, the music, which order? What are you going to say on this? What are you going to say on that? How do you put everything together? And I decided to write a script, you know, chapter 1, 2, and 3. And that made it, I mean, that made things a lot easier because you started at the beginning when on the album, I talk about my childhood, you know. The second part, it's when chaos come with the passing of my dad, which is entering, the teenage years until all, the troubles you have in life until adult life. I mean, it's not that I was talking specifically about me. It's like everyone's life is about. I mean, I imagine that you had your troubles during the teenage years, and when you're becoming an adult, God forbid us of being an adult, please. But being a grown-up, and the thing is that, I tried to do that. And when I had everything ready, I was like, okay, I have these guys, so why not? Why not? So I knew that Steve will play on the album, Steve Rothery. So I was like, okay, he will play like that. But then I wrote to Hackett, and I know that Steve Hackett made some collaborations, some of them.
Yep.
And I was like, well, I already have the no. Let's go for the yes.
That's right.
So we met a couple of times and everything. I was so nice on the email that was, Steve, I have no right to ask for this, but it will be. And he was like, hey, Gabe, I'm on tour right now. I think he was on the Middle East or something like that. But write me again in 2 weeks. I'll be back. Okay. So I wrote him again. And I remember exactly, my wife was here in Miami visiting family, here in Celebration, not in Miami, here in Celebration where we live, visiting family. I was alone in the apartment, and I remember I woke up at 7 and I saw my phone and there was an email and it said Steve Hackett, and I didn't want to open it because I was like,
could be a no.
I can't stand to be a no. And when I opened that, Steve is so nice that I think you've been in touch with him. He answers you 10 minutes, 10 minutes, not far from, from 10 minutes. He always pretty fast. And he was like, hey, Gabe, I'll be delighted to play on your album. And I was like, I remember I started screaming like crazy, like, yeah. At 7 in the morning. And because of course I'm a musician, I play with big names and everything, but I'm still a fan.
Of course.
Right. Yeah. I'm still a fan. And of course I have my pictures with Steve Hackett, but having Steve playing on your song, I mean, how can you top that?
Yeah. So Steve is very nice. He was my first interview actually. So
yeah. So he sent, I sent him the track. And I remember that the very next day, he sent me the solo for the song. And when I heard that, I was like, okay, not being disrespectful for any other artist, but he was inspired because he wasn't jamming. When you're a musician, you can tell that he wrote that thing, he thought about it. It's not, okay, I'm playing a couple of licks here and no. And at the end of the day, it was like, okay, as a Stevie Hackett fan, this is the solo to have on my music that I ever dreamt about. It was incredible because, to be honest with you, the first album that I heard from Stevie Hackett's solo's career, and to this very day, I love that album, is the Tokyo tapes.
Of course, yeah, I know that album. Yeah.
It was like a super band and all and I was like, damn, to this day, I'm listening to that album and I was like, man, the solo he played on my album tops any of that. So, being a King Crimson fan, of course, you can see my tattoo of Discipline here. So I was like, Adrian couldn't do it because he was on tour or something. Man, Adrian Belew is one of my all-time favorite artists, and but I knew that Jakko Jakszyk, he was friends with Steve, with both Steves, with Hackett and Rothery, and I was like, I'm going to take advantage of this. So I wrote him, and he was like, yeah, man, I agree. So out of the blue, I became the only guy in the planet besides Hackett, because Hackett had Rothery and Jakko on one live album, but I was the only guy on the planet to have those three guys on the same album.
Wow.
So out of the blue, I have, so you guys, if you're watching this interview, so check the album, because you will find the guitar player from Marillion, Genesis, and King Crimson on the same album.
Yeah, yeah. I interviewed Jakko as well, like a year ago. He when he wasn't touring with King Crimson, very nice person. So now for the trio, I need to interview Steve Rothery now. You know.
Yeah. I put you in touch with him, and it's great. It's great because, you know, I remember when after he recorded that, and before the pandemic, they went to Buenos Aires on the tour, you know, on their tour. He was, I mean, imagine this: King Crimson fan, already had, and he invited me to the show, and I was first row watching King Crimson, and that show that was like almost 3 hours or something, and something that was meant to be, because the night they played the first show in Buenos Aires, it was the 50th anniversary of In the Court of the Crimson King. So it was that night. So I was meant to be, right? So, and I met the band after that and all that stuff. But the only one that didn't show up was Robert, that I think he ran to the hotel or something. And yeah, that was incredible. And to this day, I mean, the album is great because it tells the story. I mean, whether you like it or not, but I mean, it's so honest, you know. I didn't want to sound like Genesis or Marillion. So when people ask me, what do you think? I mean, how it sounds like? And I was like, well, if you ask me, I try to blend together of some of my favorite bands, that it's the melody of Marillion, the rock part of Rush, you know, the energy of Rush, and the modern part of it. It's because I love Muse, one of my favorite bands. So they have their, you know, the pop thing, they have the prog thing, the heavy thing, you know, and I love
a good combination, right?
Yeah, I love the combinations, and I love bands that they don't attach to one style, you know. And of course, because I grew up during the 80s, I grew up with Misplaced Childhood, with the 80s, yes, which many people despise, but I love. I mean, I consider Trevor Rabin one of the best guitar. I mean,
of course, I agree with you.
I mean, the guy saved, whether people, I think people will hate me for this, but I think Trevor saved yes during the 80s. Yeah. You know, because they just stayed being stars. Yeah. Unlike many others, you know.
By the way, have you ever met John Anderson? I'm seeing him on Wednesday next week.
No, I never met with John. I mean, with John, and funnily enough, his producer lives here with friends, Michael Franklin, and he produced the Thousand Hands album, and now he's producing the Thousand Hands Part 2, you know, and he also produced the late Robbie Steinhardt's From Kansas album, you know. It was, I mean, so he's a very prog guy, you know, very prog guy. And I never, the night that I was supposed to meet John, I had a show, and I was like, but okay, work is work, right? So anyway, so there will be another chance. There will be another chance.
I email Michael Franklin a couple of days ago because I would love to interview him for the radio as well, and hopefully he will get back to me. And I told him that I was seeing John Anderson on Wednesday, like 2 hours from here. So I will hopefully.
I mean, and John, I don't know if he's playing with his own band. He came here to play with a rock school band.
He's playing with them.
Well, so I mean, these kids can really play, right?
Oh, can really play. Oh, yeah. There's no high school band. Very good musicians.
Take a look at Adrian Belew, for instance. I mean, when he reformed his trio, Julie, and at the time the drummer was Julie's brother.
Yeah.
Then he left and he was replaced and everything. But I mean, he was blown away that these two kids at the time were able to play Crimson or all that stuff, you know. And that's why, unlike many of my favorite rock stars say that rock is dead, rock is not dead. These kids, you know, there will be always kids learning all this stuff, you know, and I love that. I love that.
Oh, of course. I read somewhere that you are currently being endorsed by several music gear companies, right? Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, yeah, that makes me, I mean, not only that makes me proud, but it makes my wife happy that I'm not spending fortunes on guitar, right?
That's right.
Even I have a couple. But yeah, I mean, it's great, you know, when you work with several companies, because it's not I mean, seriously, it's not a matter of getting things for free. It's a matter of you feel that you're supported on your job, because when you're on tour and you become a professional musician, you need to rely on your gear a lot. You cannot go with a shitty guitar out there, you know, and say, oh, this is the best, and you're fighting the thing the whole time. So the brands and the companies I work with show me that their products are incredible. I'm lucky enough to say that I test them and road test them, you know, on tours for a long time. So everything that I use, it's because I think it's the best, you know, in the market. Because either Reverend guitars, you know, even people say, how can you play a Korean made guitar? Well, if it's good enough for the guy from The Cure and, you know, and the guys from many other bands, it's good enough for me. And I've been playing with those guitars. I mean, I always like the guitars, you know, to be able to play a lot of different things. And so I can be able to play a whole show with the same guitar. That's why sometimes a Fender Stratocaster or a Gibson Les Paul doesn't work the whole time for me, because they have a certain sounds that are awesome on their own, right? But for a session player that I need to play many styles, you know, and probably on the same show, I always, you know, doing modifications to the circuits and all that stuff. But the thing is that I need something to be very versatile. And these guitars are, I mean, let's take for an instance, the last show. I play with the Icons of Classic Rock, you know, it's a show with a collective of singers. You play with the singer from Santana, a singer from Survivor, from the Romantics, the 80s band, right? From Foreigner and Boston. So on the same show, you're playing from the Romantics. That's what I like about you. I'm talking in your sleep, to Santana, to Foreigner, to Quiet Riot, because Paul Shortino is a former singer for Rothcat and Quiet Riot. And going through all those styles in the same show, how in the hell you do that with a Gibson Les Paul? Don't get me wrong, they're awesome, but I don't like to carry 4 guitars, because sometimes the tour allows with the budget to do it, to bring 10 guitars if you want, and sometimes you need to carry just one or two, you know. Yeah. And I always carry 2 because I need the main one and the backup to that, you know. And I was able to play the whole thing, you know, with just 2 guitars. And that's why I always rely on the best thing. I mean, you cannot go, like I said, with a cheap guitar out there, because one thing is playing on the bar on your neighborhood. Well, one thing is when you need to go from a country to another and go through airplanes, airports, blah, 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 blah. So the things stay in tune, stay great during the whole time, you know, and the string the same, elixir string for the guitar players out there. I can tell you, if you're lazy as like me to change strings, elixir strings last the longest and they're awesome. And you change them like every 2 months. So yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's a musician thing, you know, but with the time you learn that some stuff is great, some stuff is not, but you always get the stuff you can rely on, you know, and that applies to the records as well. I mean, you don't play, I mean, whatever you play, it will reflect on your record, you know.
No, absolutely. You mean you've been playing with touring with Fran Cosmo, the lead singer from the band Boston? Feel free to elaborate on how that, you know, how often and for how long have you been playing with him? And I will bring you some names for you to elaborate. So yeah.
Well, the latest one is Fran. When I moved here, I was supposed to work with Bobby Kimball from TOTO.
Yeah.
You know, and when I was here and I was supposed to be flying back and forth, and because obviously we've been in touch with Fran because we were supposed to do a South American tour.
Yeah.
And the tour was canceled like a couple of weeks before it started, blah, blah, blah. So we get in touch. And he knew, because I've been telling all my fellow musicians, you know, that, hey, I'm moving to Florida, so if you need me, blah, blah, blah. And by September last year, you know, 2021, he called me and like, hey, Gabe, look, I need a guitar player because my guitar player got ill and, you know, he's not able to play right now. So I need a guitar player and you're here and you play with all these guys, you know, and are you interested in jump into my band? And I was like, okay, let me think about it. Yes. Yes, because I always been a Boston fan, you know, and Fran, it's a very cool guy, very cool guy. Then, of course, I was able to play all the Boston songs, you know, that I grew up with, and I was listening on the radio. I mean, you're playing, I don't know, More Than a Feeling, a rock and roll band, you know, and all those timeless hits that, and you see people join in and singing, and you know the emotion on their faces, you know, because they grew up and sometimes you see people crying, you know, in the first rows, and because those songs are part of their soundtrack of their lives, you know.
Of course.
And it happened. Well, it happened the same to me with every of the artists I played with, you know. When I play with these guys and the icons of classic rock, when you play Eye of the Tiger and all those, and the Foreigner songs, so Come and Feel the Noise from Quiet Riot, and the same with Bobby. I remember Bobby was the first big artist I played with. And I remember with Bobby, I started playing arenas, you know, and as the first time I started playing for 5, 8, 10, 15,000 people, you know, and the first time I heard the audience roar, you know, when the lights goes out, and I remember one particular night in Peru, we were in Arequipa, big amphitheater, and I remember start playing Africa, you know, and you were playing there, you got the grades just in front of you and all the way, you know, around. And the Africa's percussion, you know, and the moment you start playing it, dan, 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 you hear from the top the roar coming out, and like,
of course.
I mean, I get goosebumps to the moment, to this very moment from hearing that. And when we play Africa or Rosanna or Hold the Line, you know, I remember people in tears, you know, crying, and then you realize, man, these songs means, I mean, a lot to these people. They're part of the soundtrack of their lives. So from that moment, I realized that how lucky I am, you know, to being able to play with these guys, because obviously I grew up with those songs too. I mean, when I played with Lynn Turner, you know, playing Rainbow songs or Deep Purple songs with the guys, you know, hanging on your shoulder, is like, what? Pinch me, right?
Yeah, pinch me. Yeah,
Pinch me.
TOTO.
I mean,
Yeah, TOTO is an unbelievable band. I had the opportunity to interview the drummer that used to be with them, Simon Phillips.
oh man, come on, come on. I mean, that it's a drum god, you know. And
he is unbelievable. I mean the way he's unbelievable. There's no way to describe. Plus, Simon is a very nice person too. Not just he's a good musician,
yes,
good person.
yeah.
You know,
Well,
and,
imagine this is not the right guitar, but
yeah.
imagine when I was the first time with Steve Rothery and he started playing the.
Yeah.
Kulick, and I was like, Jesus, man, I grew up with it. And when you hear Steve playing the solo that.
Yeah.
I was like, I played that solo 1,000 times, but none of them sound like Steve. And I was just right 1 feet away from him, you know.
Were you nervous? At the beginning, the first night.
When I play with Steve, it was more like I already had a career, you know, as a session guy. So I don't think I was nervous, but of course, the first time Steve comes into the rehearsal room and he puts in, and I was like, not nervous. It's like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to play? Because obviously he's a guitar god. You know what I mean?
Of course.
What are you supposed to play with the guy? And no, just play the rhythm or whatever you want. But no, I don't want to be in your way. You know, just tell me what you want me to play. And from that moment, I was like, that's why, you know, we became so good friends, because I never was in the process of being, no, okay, I'm playing with this, so I'm going to take my opportunity to shine myself. No, I'm always like, every time we play, because we love to play Comfortably Numb, you know, for Pink Floyd, from Pink Floyd. And
yeah.
I always like, I played the chords, the acoustic, whatever. And I remember the last time we played, he was on the first solo after the chorus. Play, you play that. No, Steve, I played solos during the whole show, man. Play something. And then, I mean, at the end, we trade licks back and forth, but he was like, and I was like, this is great, because I never dared to try myself into the spot and try to take advantage of that, because no, I'm going to no, I'm just happy to be with the guy there. So of course it's a thrill when you're right next to him, and I mean right next to him, like I have you like far from my computer right now, you know. It's like,
my God, man. Yeah.
And he's playing Kulick or No One Can, or when we play Heart of Lothian, I was like, and he started the melodic line. I was like, how lucky I am to be in this position, you know?
Yeah. Plus the money traveling was very good, I suppose. You know,
Yeah. I mean, the money, it's always a reward.
Yeah.
It's always I mean, being a session player and playing with all these guys and touring worldwide, of course, it's my day job. It's my day job. And as many other guys, I mean, you name it, the guys that plays in Whitesnake, that plays in, even in Yes or so, I mean, if you're not a permanent member, it's your day job.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. So even like Steve Rothery says, Marillion is my day job. My solo band is a thing that I do for fun, you know, and of course, everyone needs to work. So that fantasy of being, you know, super millionaire, even the millionaire guys needs to go on tour from time to time to pay the bills. That's it.
Of course, yeah.
Or to afford another divorce, right? Or whatever. But
No, expensive divorce, man.
No, especially the guys like Motley Crue and all those guys that they've been married like, I don't know, or Mick Jagger that he needs to support like, I don't know, 20 kids. I don't know how many children he has.
Mick Jagger's, he's very rich guy, man. But every divorce costs him, I don't know, $5 million.
Yeah, and but coming back to the thing, I mean, money, it's, of course, it's something that you need and everyone needs. I mean, it's not that you're, I mean, that you're doing for free, you know. Even if you make little money and you do it well, at least you get paid, and because your time is valuable, you know, and that's what it counts at the end of the day. I mean, every musician can tell you the same, that with these guys. I mean, I have a dream job. I'm getting paid to play with my idols, with my heroes, traveling around the world, meeting incredible people, and also getting a check for that. Come on, are you kidding me?
Of course, yeah. Well, some musicians that are better and more popular pay better than others, right? So, but still.
Yeah, of course. I mean, of course. Yeah. Well, take for instance, Nita Strauss, the female, the guitar player for Alice Cooper. She left Alice 2 weeks ago to move into Demi Lovato's, right? So many people were like, why in the heck she's leaving Alice? I mean, Alice is a rock legend, but Alice is 75.
Yeah.
And also Demi Lovato, I mean, people need to understand that even the music, with all the music and all the stuff, this is a business. So Demi Lovato, of course, has a more budget, a bigger budget than probably Alice. And Nita went for a check like this, you know, bigger like this. And it's okay, because at the end of the day, you never know when the gig is over.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Alice Cooper may have a car attack or decided, well, I'm done. I don't need money. I don't want to tour anymore. My wife complained, my kids complain.
Well, so I'll tell you something.
If you are a guitar for them, you lose a job, you know. So.
Well, actually, very good friend of mine, Joe Hoekstra from Whitesnake. Joe, the blonde guy, you know, from Whitesnake, he's a guitar god, you know. Well, if you watch the pandemic video that we did, he's playing there along with Bruce Kulick and all this stuff. So Joel plays with Trans-Siberian Orchestra. He was touring with Cher, and he's playing with Whitesnake, right?
Yeah.
And also on the Rock of Ages musical, you know, Broadway musical. So people is like, well, you're going from Whitesnake to Cher? Yeah, of course, why not? Why not? And also remember, Cher is not touring. Whitesnake are on the farewell tour. So what will happen when that ends? You need to find a new job.
Of course, yeah.
And of course, I mean, would I love to play with Iggy Pop? Of course. But if I'm offered to play with, or let's say that Steve Hackett called me to be his bass player, I would love to. But if Miley Cyrus called me to play on her tour, I'll do it, of course, because at the end of the day, this is my job.
Yeah.
This is my job. You know, I mean, when I used to be a respectable person.
Where was that?
Yeah, I was pretty young. When I used to be a software developer, you know, it's the same. You're in the same business, right? So you understand what happens when a company calls you for a bigger check. You say, no, I love this company. I say, no, you go with the other company. You leave. Yeah. Because, of course, you need to buy a house, to get a better rent, or pay the mortgage. Have more money, whatever. Yeah. Well, the difference between you and me is that I play the guitar for a living and you play the keyboard for a living.
Correct. Yeah. But man, you have played. I mean, eventually I imagine that you want to write like a biography or a little book or like Steve
Well,
Rothery.
I always
like
know about, but I'm waiting. I'm waiting till I get 50 to that.
Because think about it, like Steve Rothery, right? He like picture, he take his out. I mean, you have played with so many people, man. It's like Survivor, guy from Genesis, Marillion, Cream Crimson, Kids, Foreigner, Santana, Madonna, blah blah blah, right? So you've been associated with the top band. Think about it. Have you ever pinch yourself and say, man, you were a bad student growing out in Argentina. Growing in Argentina, you ever made it to high school? You thought, man, your band, your mom said, forget about music. You will never go to make it. You need to go to school, get a job, and then look at you now, man. 20 years later, you have played with everybody.
I always say that when people say, when you're young, where do you think music will take you? Do you think it's gonna take you far? Well, it got me a green card. It got me to live in the place, in the country I love, a couple of times, and it got me here, to play with my heroes. So at the end of the day, like I said, it's a job. But when you're in the spot with these guys, it's something. I mean, do you remember this? Of course. The Romantics.
Yeah. I cannot hear you, but I can feel that.
Well, either tell me that you want me to.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, even if you like it or not, you grew up with those songs.
Of course.
And being able with the guy, being on stage with the guy playing all those songs.
Yeah.
I mean, is it Genesis? No, of course not, because it's different kind of music. But at the end of the day, what it comes to me, if it's the emotion and the feelings that I have when I am able to play that song with the actual guy.
Yeah.
And of course I played that song in countless bands, but now I'm able to play with the guy. The same with being a Rocky fan, playing Eye of the Tiger, Burning Heart, I mean, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, man.
And not only that, on stage, because when I was in the visa process to come here, those guys actually helped me with the recommendation letters. I had the letters from the guy from Survivor and many friends. Even, Bruce Gage, it's top session player. He was the writer for La Isla Bonita and for the whole of the Richard Marx first album, and and when I look, because I have those letters framed, and then when I was looking at those frames, I was like, Jesus, man, I mean, it's totally crazy. It's totally crazy, but believe me, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that every morning when I wake up, I need to grab the guitar because I make a living out of it, because I'm making a living out of a piece of wood with some strings on it. Come on. Come on. I mean, I couldn't ask for anything else. I have a beautiful family. I live in the place I love. Doing what I love with the people I love.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
I mean, that is what life is all about, and not trying to sound kind of hippie or dreamer. But yes, you call me dreamer if you want. But the good thing is that dreams are there to make them come true.
Yeah. For me, it was the same. I never saw Gabe that listening to some records, some tapes before CDs, right? Vinyl and tape recorded that heroes of mine that now later on I will be able to interview them, and invite them. Some of them I'm going to be going. I went to Europe and I'm going to Germany soon, and electronic music is very important to me. So I already met. I'm going to be in the living room, getting a beer with people that have a record that I was listening to 4 years ago. So I know exactly what you say.
Let me show you something. Let me grab something that I need to show you.
Yeah, let me give me 1 minute. Let me pause. No problem. Go ahead, man. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, one of the benefits of being here, you will recognize some of this, right?
Of course, Marillion. Oh, that's a very good album, man. To Gabe, thanks for everything. My God, man. I need to
See?
get one of those. TOTO, of course. Yeah. To Gabe, my good friend, Bobby Kimball. Oh, man. My God, man.
Boston.
Of course. Yeah.
This was a special gift from Steve,
Yeah.
the vinyl of his solo album.
Yeah, of course. Steve Rothery. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I have even the last Marillion album, and I have a couple of these souvenirs, and a lot more, that I have as memorabilia, because like I said, I'm lucky enough to play with these guys, but at the end of the day, I'm a fan.
Yeah, sure. You need to come when you are not touring. You need to come here to Virginia to visit us as well. My wife is a very good cook, and I will show you my stuff too. I have a lot.
I hope to be on tour. I hope to be on tour very soon there. I hope to be on tour very soon there, so we can spend some time together. Of course, I always love a good food.
Yeah. Oh no, you will like it, man. And then if not, if I'm in
I
Florida,
hope you have some pisco in there.
We have everything. We have pisco, Chilean wine, good. My wife is a very good cook, so we'll have a great time. Hey, Gabe, I think we've been talking to an hour, so let's, in a couple of weeks, if you want, we can do a part 2 of the interview, because a lot of topics that we need to go, and I know you need to get ready for tonight. You're playing tonight, and it was very nice talking to you, Gabe, and when done, I will send you the right link.
Having me. Thank you so much for having me. Sorry, people, for my South Carolinian accent, but
no, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, but you have played, man. You need to look back, and I'm not telling you anything that you don't know, but you need to look back and say, man, when I was 20, I was daydreaming, listening to Soda Stereo, this or that. Now you're 40 or so. I have played with the best musicians in the country. The same thing for me. Growing up, I had records from the Tangerine Dream people, or the Klaus Schulze, or Manuel Goshin, or Steve Hackett, or whatever, and I have now, 30 years later, I have interviewed a lot of this guy. I have had beer in the living room, with most of the guys. So still a lot to come, but I'm very lucky. I'm very fortunate.
It's something that when people say the old good times, well, I don't think that. I never been attached to that, because 30 years ago, you weren't able to do all that.
Yeah.
Having an interview from your home with Steve Hackett, with all those guys, I mean, forget it.
Yeah.
Forget it. Imagine, like on my album, 30 years ago, having the guys from King Crimson, Genesis, and Marillion on the same album. How in the hell you do it?
Yeah, you can, be internet.
I mean, you need to go to London and set up a recording studio, and get the guys, because it's great. Nowadays, it's great. I mean, doing this, like the good old days, it was just a phone.
On the phone, right? We couldn't record the stuff, yeah.
That's it, on the phone. But, this is great. I think this is great. And thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for having me. It was really great. And and for the audience, I hope you enjoy the record out there. I mean, there will be a new single coming out in a couple of weeks, and hopefully by September, October, the vinyl will be out. So
perfect, great. It was very nice talking to you, Gabe, man. Take it easy, man.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Take it easy, man.
Bye.